You ever notice how a lot of long-haul flights take off around midnight? Like the airline looked at your sleep schedule and said, "Perfect, let's make this weird." You're at the gate, half awake, you board, they hand you a dinner, even though you already ate dinner, and then you're expected to fall asleep in a seat that reclines. Emotionally, not physically. And it's especially common on eastbound trips, like North America to Europe, where so many flights seem to leave at night like it's a rule. So why does the industry keep doing it? Because that midnight takeoff isn't random. It's a whole system clicking into place. Airports, connections, crew, logistics, and even the wind up there deciding whether it wants to help or make your flight feel longer. In this video, I'm gonna break down what's really behind that pattern. And once you see how the pieces fit, you'll stop thinking, why is this flight leaving at midnight? And start thinking, oh, it basically had to. All right, let's get into it. First, airlines love overnight departures because your body already wants to sleep. Late night is your natural shutdown window. If the plane takes off during that window, you're more likely to actually fall asleep, even if it's not perfect sleep. And sleep is basically a time machine on a long haul. A 10-hour flight sounds brutal until you sleep for 7 of it. Now, it doesn't feel like 10 hours. It feels like 3 hours of being awake on a plane, which is way more tolerable. That's why an overnight flight that lands in the morning often feels easier to handle. You board tired, you get a chunk of sleep, and you wake up with morning energy around you. Lights on, breakfast vibes, people acting like they have their lives together. If you want to increase your odds of getting that time skip effect, don't sabotage the first hour. Keep it low stimulation. Screen dim, light meal, skip the late coffee. Basically make your brain think, okay, we're actually sleeping now. And when a lot of people do sleep, the whole cabin gets calmer and easier to run, which is exactly what airlines want. That's piece 2. Here's the selfish reason airlines love when you sleep. A sleeping cabin is a calm cabin. When most people are knocked out, the plane stops feeling like a busy public space. The aisle clears. The constant up and down movement drops off. And the crew can actually run the flight instead of playing, "Excuse me, sorry, just gonna squeeze past you for 10 hours." Because the hard part for the crew isn't being in the air for 10 hours. It's 10 hours of non-stop requests. In the daytime, it's a parade. Water, snacks, bathroom line, someone searching for their headphones like they disappeared into another dimension. On a red eye, there's usually a long, quiet stretch where things finally stabilize. That lets the crew time service clean up, reset, and prep for the next round without the cabin constantly changing shape. It also matters for safety. If the ride gets bumpy, it's a lot less risky when most people are seated and settled instead of standing in the aisle doing that careful airplane balance walk with a cup in their hand. So, yes, overnight flights match your sleep window, but they also make the cabin easier to manage for hours at a time. And now for the bigger system level reason, airlines aren't scheduling one flight. They're scheduling a chain. That's piece 3. Now, zoom out from your seat and look at the airline's real goal, connections. A lot of long-haul flights aren't designed to arrive whenever. They're designed to arrive at a hub at the exact time the airport is about to explode with departures. Think of it like a relay race. Your long haul lands, you hand the baton off, and within a couple hours, you can fan out to a bunch of other cities. Morning is the sweet spot for that. If your flight lands around early morning, you have options. A couple hours later, there's a whole bank of regional and short haul flights leaving. Your trip feels like one continuous move instead of a 2-part journey with a long, awkward pause in the middle. Flip it the other way. If that same long haul lands late afternoon or late night, the connection menu shrinks fast. Those onward flights are already gone, and quick connection quietly turns into, "Congrats, you live in this airport until tomorrow." Airlines hate that because passengers hate that. People don't remember the plane model or the seat pitch. They remember missing the connection and sleeping next to an outlet. So that's a major reason overnight departures keep showing up. A night takeoff is the setup that lets you land in the morning wave. And once every airline is fighting for that same morning window at the same big airports, you run into the next problem. Those times are basically premium real estate, and airports control it. That's piece 4. If you've ever noticed that long-haul flights on the same route all seem to leave around the same time, this is why. At big airports, airlines aren't really buying space. They're buying a specific minute. A slot is basically your reserved timestamp, your permission to take off or land in a narrow window. Miss that window, and you're not just a little late. You can end up stuck in a traffic jam of planes, which turns into missed connections and a schedule that collapses like a cheap suitcase. But curfews are what really hard lock the clock. Some airports simply shut down most operations overnight. Frankfurt, for example, has a strict night restriction for planned flights from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Sydney's curfew runs from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Heathrow has a tightly restricted night period too, with its strictest limits between 11:30 p.m. and 6 a.m. So airlines end up threading a needle. They time departures so they can arrive right after the curfew lifts, because landing at 5:30 or 6 a.m. is allowed, landing at 4:59 a.m. is not. And yes, that can create the most frustrating situation ever. You're basically there, and the plane still has to burn time. Sometimes that means holding patterns or even a go-around if you're too early. There have literally been cases where arriving seconds ahead of the curfew cutoff forced a second attempt. So now you've got connection banks pushing arrivals into the morning and curfews squeezing everyone into the same few legal windows. That's why the schedule starts to look molded into place. But airports aren't the only thing shaping the timing. Once you're over the Atlantic, the lanes in the sky and the wind start calling shots too. Now for the part that makes the night schedule feel way less random. The Atlantic crossing is organized around the wind. Up at cruising altitude, the jet stream usually runs west to east. So if you're flying to Europe, catching that tailwind can chop real time off the flight and save fuel. Same plane, same ocean. One day you get pushed, another day you don't. Here's the key link to night departures. Over the Atlantic, flights don't all just pick any path they want. Traffic is organized into a set of tracks, and those tracks basically work in shifts. The big eastbound push happens overnight, and that's when the eastbound lanes are built to line up with the most helpful forecast tailwinds and keep everyone separated. So when a long haul leaves North America in the evening, it isn't only because you'll land in the morning. It's also because you're timed to hit the ocean when the eastbound night shift tracks are active, meaning you're more likely to get a route and altitude that actually lets you ride that jet stream instead of fighting for a worse lane. That's why the Atlantic night shift is such a big deal for eastbound flights. And that leads to the obvious question. If night works so well going east, why doesn't it work the same way going west? So yeah, everything we just explained about midnight long hauls, that's mostly an eastbound thing. When you fly east, North America to Europe, leaving at night just makes sense. You sleep a little and you land in the morning when the whole place is actually awake and running. But flying west, Europe back to the US, a night departure usually turns into a headache. Because of time zones, Europe is 5 to 9 hours ahead. So if you take off from Europe at like 10 p.m., a 7 to 9 hour flight can drop you into the US around midnight to 2 a.m. local time. And that's basically the everything is closed hour for connections. Fewer flights, quieter airports, more waiting, and sometimes you're stuck overnight. And then there's the wind. Up high, the jet stream mostly flows west to east, so when you're flying back west, it's like biking into a strong headwind. You're not getting a free push, you're trying not to get slowed down. So airlines plan westbound routes like this. They look at where the strongest wind in your face is and they steer around it. Maybe a little farther north or south, maybe a different altitude. And across the Atlantic, those lanes for transatlantic traffic are basically set up in shifts. Daytime is the main westbound shift. That's when the routes are built for the westbound crowd, and they're placed using the wind forecast to avoid the worst headwind zones as much as possible. Now add the network problem. US hubs do their best. Spread everyone across the country flights in the afternoon into early evening. If you land then, you can connect and keep moving. If you land after midnight, there's nothing to plug into. And passenger-wise, westbound already makes the day feel longer. A westbound red-eye means sleeping at the wrong time and landing at the worst time, midnight, when everything's closed. That's why most westbound transatlantic flights leave Europe in the morning through mid-afternoon, roughly 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., and arrive in North America in the afternoon or early evening. It's not illegal to fly westbound at night, it's just usually the worst deal. So yeah, those midnight long hauls aren't random. Sleep, cabin flow, connections, airport rules, and even the wind all push the schedule into the same narrow window. Now, I want to hear from you. Which part surprised you most? Drop it in the comments and tell me what other travel thing you've always wondered about. If you like this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.